Back to the breakouts. You guys gave me a ton of breakouts, and only one quarterback was on there, and it was Heath's breakouts. We'll start with Heath's, and it was Justin Fields. Oh, man, what could stop him from breaking out?
What could an injury be the first thing? That might be it. I think he should be the consensus breakout candidate at quarterback. I felt bad that after I thought about it that I didn't put Trevor Lawrence on there as well, because he should be right there in that group as well of guys who could be a lot better than they were last year. It'll be easier for Lawrence because he wasn't near as good last year as Fields. But no, I think Fields could make a leap to QB1. And my assumption, my projection, my expectation is that he's a top 5 quarterback this year, which in itself would be a breakout.
Man, it's so funny because how long have we been working together, Heath? Like 8 years?
8 years, yeah.
When he says it'll be easier for Lawrence because he wasn't as good as Justin Fields last year, I don't know if he's just stating fact or if he's ribbing me a little bit. I don't know. I feel like that was directed at me. And I just, I just don't know. I'm just so confused sometimes with Heath, but Fields was definitely a lot better in fantasy than Lawrence. There's certainly no question about that.
But they both have that magic factor that we've seen with these young breakout quarterbacks. Justin Fields got DJ Moore. Trevor Lawrence hopefully gets prime Calvin Ridley. And those types of things, we saw it with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. We saw it with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. We saw it with DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray. There is nothing more helpful to a young quarterback developing as a passer than to get a wide receiver on his team that gets open all the time.
Yeah, Dave, I don't really know what else to say about Justin Fields. I mean, I guess we could just say where would you draft him? I believe Heath has him ahead of Burrow. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
What about you, Dave?
He's a spot behind Burrow for me, but I completely echo the sentiments. It's the rushing upside. On top of him, his efficiency as a passer last year, and I really need to say outside of the red zone, was awful. Inside the red zone, he was tops in the NFL in completion rate and touchdown rate. A lot of people don't know that about him. Did a whole video on DJ Moore on YouTube. Check it out. If Fields can improve outside of the red zone, then I like his chances to have better passing numbers this year and better passing efficiency overall. And I still think he's going to run the dickens out of it when a play breaks down, and that's got to be baked into his profile as well. He does have QB1 upside, but so too do Mahomes, Hurts, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow. Really close call for me between Burrow and Fields. Burrow better than Fields on a per-game basis last year. And so it's hard for me to really believe that Fields can take just a huge jump ahead of Burrow. I think it'll be close. And that's really it. The injury thing with Fields, it's a concern. But I bet you'll see Chicago's offensive line play better, just like you'll see Cincinnati's offensive line play better next year. If you think you can get Fields after Burrow, wait for Fields, draft Fields in that round 4 or 5 range. If you think you've got to reach for Fields, get him in round 4 ahead of Burrow. That's okay too. I'm not going to fight you on it.
And I will say, I think I actually have Burrow projected for more points. It's just much, much easier for me to see Fields putting together a QB1 season than Burrow.
Last question real quick. We usually do our quarterback discussions centered around 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. Dave, in a 4-point per passing touchdown league, would you take Fields over?
Okay. Yeah, I think Fields belongs over there. And just to put it out there on audio, Burrow, 26.3 fantasy points per game last year. Fields, from week 5 on, 26.2. Now, that's not my argument to take Burrow ahead of Fields. That's just telling you how damn close it is between those two guys.
Yeah, I think there's probably an even better sample than that. In the last 9 games, I think he averaged over 27 points per game. But he also was on pace. He was on pace for like 1,600 rushing yards, which would be, the record by a mile. All right, sorry. Enough on Fields. He's a great breakout candidate. The running backs you provided, Heath, were Tony Pollard. I think we can skip him. But let's talk about Rachaad White and then a little bit on Bijan Robinson as well. I'll ask you if there's a scenario where Bijan Robinson would leave this list, like which team would draft him where you'd say, oh, no, he can't break out there. But why don't you answer that, and then we'll talk about Rachaad White. Is there a team that drafts Bijan Robinson where you go, ooh, I hate it?
There could be a team that could draft him I would say, ooh, I hate it. There is not a team that could draft him that I would say, oh no, he can't be a breakout candidate anymore. Now, obviously, I'm presuming the Indianapolis Colts are not going to draft Bijan Robinson and pair him with Jonathan Taylor. I'm trying to work within the bounds of like reality, but he could go to the worst team in the NFL, and I think he has a chance to still be a top 12 running back.
Okay. Dallas has been mentioned as a landing spot for Bijan Robinson.
I would be more likely to take Tony Pollard off the list than Bijan Robinson.
So you'd have Bijan ranked ahead of Pollard, for example.
Yes.
I probably would too if they were to make that move. What about if Cleveland pulled a Dallas and they've got Nick Chubb for like one more year or something like that, and then they move on from Chubb and then Bijan's there. But for this year coming up, it's both of them in the backfield in Cleveland. Is that too untethered from reality for you?
Well, if that happens, then Adam's take that Deshaun Watson's the best value in fantasy drafts right now is going to be untrue because all the talk we've heard about them. But no, that would probably be the worst. I can't realistically imagine them taking him, but if they did,
can't either. But I'm just saying.
They didn't trade or cut Nick Chubb, then I would probably have Chubb ranked ahead of Bijan, and they'd both be between 13 and 24.
So let me give you one more that I think fantasy managers might be squeamish about, but I'm not sure they should be. Bijan Robinson is the first-round pick of the Buffalo Bills.
He'd be a top 12 running back for me, and I just think it would signal. I don't think that makes any sense either because they just went and got Damian Harris, and they already have James Cook. But if they did that, yeah, I would assume that he's going to make both of those guys irrelevant.
I agree.
It's interesting, though, with him going to Dallas, which, has been rumored and not rumored, but, people, there's a chance, right? Let's just say there's a chance. Pollard's on a 1-year franchise deal right now. They could sign up to a bigger deal, but right now it's just a 1-year deal, and they could let him walk. It's really hard. Okay, it's hard to say this out loud, but I think there's a case to be made that just on a per-carry basis, Tony Pollard's been one of the best running backs in football since he's entered the league. The guy's been incredible. I don't know. And then this is, he's on your breakouts list too. But sure, Bijan Robinson's a much better prospect than Tony Pollard, but it'll be, I don't know. I don't know that you just take Pollard off the field if you draft Bijan Robinson, or you just make him a very small part.
I would assume that Bijan would have Zeke's role from last year, and they'd leave Pollard in his same role, and Bijan in Zeke's role could still be a top 10 running back.
With potential to overtake work from Pollard.
Pollard was a top 10 running back.
Right. Yeah, they might have 2 top 12 running backs in that case.
Okay. All right, so how about Rachaad White? Rachaad White, kind of a big dude, ran like a 4.48 40 at the combine a couple of years ago. Did not have a great year, but just such a terrible offense. And I think people are going to be a little afraid of anyone on the Bucs, but they said they wanted to be a third down back. What do you think about Rachaad White right now, Heath?
A 3-down back, not a third down
Sorry.
back. Big difference between those two things. I'm a little bit skeptical of Rachaad White having that top 12 upside like Pollard does, but I do think he could be a top 15, top 20 guy and have a breakout season where he handles the ball 300 times. The offense for the Bucs worries me a little bit, so I wouldn't want to go draft White too early. But I think in that same spot that we were talking about taking the breakout wide receivers, that round 4 or 5 range in full PPR, I'd feel pretty good about it.
Dave, your thoughts on Rachaad White? The Bucs, by the way, just recently said they hate Rachaad White. No, wait, they like Rachaad White. Sorry. Just kidding.
It'd be weird if they said they hated him.
Yeah, no, they like
it. It would also be refreshing. It would be a team giving some.
When do you think we should draft Rachaad White?
I think we should draft Rachaad White. Let me see. In full PPR, non-PPR, half PPR, which league are we in today?
We'll do full PPR, and I'll just tell you where he went. He went in round 6. He went just after Tyler Algier and Isaiah Pacheco.
Perfect spot. That's where he should go. That could change if the Bucs go through the draft process and don't add anything at running back. But I do worry about how efficient he'll be or explosive he'll be in an offense that's going from Tom Brady at quarterback to Baker Mayfield at quarterback. And Baker isn't exactly known as a guy that's, makes kings out of anybody that he throws the football to. It's a case to, have as Mike Evans as a bust and Chris Godwin in non-PPR as a bust. And I think Rachaad White could follow suit and not be great, but he'll have an opportunity with some volume you're talking about a guy that could be a low-end number 2 fantasy running back.
And would you rather have Algier or Rachaad White?
White.
As of now, Algier.
Okay. Why Heath Algier? Or why Heath Rachaad White?
I think he has a lot more receiving upside. And I am more concerned about the Falcons adding someone like that's the team we didn't mention for Bijan, but I would not be in the least bit surprised if Arthur Smith wanted to go get him some Bijan Robinson and just run the ball 700 times next year.
But if they don't invest in running back in the NFL draft, anything significant, let's say a day 1 or 2 pick.
If neither team invests in running back, I still think there's a higher percentage of the touches for Rachaad White. Because Cordero Patterson's still there.
But who's going to be better with the touch? Okay. Who's going to be better with the touch? All right.
I think in YPC leagues, I'd probably take Algier.
Well, it's not just that. It's you're talking about. There's always a quote that stands out to me from Todd Bowles, who's the coach, but also defensive-minded coach for the Bucs. He said the Falcons. He said last year the Falcons have maybe the best run scheme in football.
Yeah.
So it's an easy run game to buy into. Oh. Okay. Other breakouts. Oh, wide receiver. Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Christian Watson. I don't want to just skip everything, but we did talk about London and Watson, so I'll ask you a Garrett Wilson question. Still on your list with no Aaron Rodgers as of yet, with Alan Lazard, with Mecole Hardman, still on your breakout list because he's gonna be, I think at the latest around 3 pick at this point.
Yeah, and I think round 3 is where he's belonged. I've gotten a little bit less excited just due to the drama and the reminder of how high maintenance their potential new quarterback is. There's a lot of things that could go wrong with the Jets, but I don't believe that if somehow this Rodgers thing falls apart, that's going to mean that Zach Wilson's the starting quarterback. There's still multiple avenues for the Jets to go get a better quarterback than Zach Wilson, maybe starting with Ryan Tannehill, who their coaching staff has a little connection to, I believe. So that's kind of where I am. I think it's going to be better than Zach Wilson. I think it's probably going to be better than Mike White and Joe Flacco, but as long as it's as good as Mike White and Joe Flacco, Garrett Wilson's a top 12 wide receiver.
Do you remember what his PPR points per game was without Zach Wilson last year?
I think it was 17.5 with like 2 weeks to go, but I don't know where it finished.
You're way off. It was 17.3, but the number is huge, 17, and that's with Mike White, Joe Flacco, Chris Streveler. I mean, Heath, this guy is great. He's a great route runner, awesome at making plays after the catch, willing to cross the field, catches the ball away from his body. He's got great hands. He's got speed. He's got everything that you want at wide receiver, except he's not a Hulk. He's not Drake London in terms of size. And as long as he's playing with a competent quarterback, he's going to be a breakout candidate. If he's playing with a great quarterback, and I still think Aaron Rodgers is good enough to be called great, then he's got top 10 potential.
So Garrett Wilson, this stat always surprises me. It might surprise you. He averaged more yards per target with Zach Wilson than he did with Mike White and Joe Flacco. In the 9 games that Zach Wilson and then partially Chris Streveler played, it was 8 yards per target. In the 8 games with Mike White and Flacco, it was 7.2 yards per target. So why were his numbers so much better? I mean, we always say because of Zach Wilson. I think it was primarily because in those games with Zach Wilson, the Jets threw 28.7 passes per game. In the other games, they threw 45.8 passes per game. They didn't trust Zach Wilson to throw, it seems. But he still had good numbers when Zach Wilson played, not every week. He was just incredible. And, I kind of laughed at Dan Schneier for taking Garrett Wilson with the 3rd pick of round 2, 15th overall. But if he becomes the player that he might become, that if he becomes a star, it might be a great pick. He went ahead of A.J. Brown. He went ahead of Devontae Adams. He went ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's a little rich, but you could at least see a scenario where, hey, Dan was right. We were crazy. We were wrong.
No, I think there's a real path to by like October 15th of this year, Garrett Wilson is the consensus number 3 wide receiver in Dynasty behind only Chase and Jefferson.
Yeah. All right. We think he's a terrific player and you definitely want to draft him. Hopefully you don't have to take him in round 2. Okay. I think let's go to your tight ends. Interesting list here. I mean, Kyle Pitts is a breakout tight end. and Pat Freiermuth as a breakout tight end. So this is honestly, these might be the two, this is not to discredit the rest of your list. To me, these are the two most interesting ones. I think they're fascinating.
I think we all have the same, like, there was nothing controversial about the first part of my breakout list, I think is a good way to put it. Like, those guys, I don't even like Rachaad White as much as a lot of people do. I expect Freiermuth to probably be the spiciest. There's still enough Pitts believers hanging on to that hope that he's still going to be ranked mostly as a top 5, top 6 tight end by the time we get to August. I just think that there was a step forward taken by Pat Freiermuth last season that was hidden by the fact that his very good fortune in the red zone in his rookie year turned into absolutely craptastic luck in his second year. And I would expect a more normal touchdown rate in year 3. I think the fact that he earned 98 targets in 16 games, he absolutely has a chance to be the number 2 target on his own team. He was last year. He saw his yards per catch and yards per target increase significantly last year. We saw them use him more down the field. He had a 5.3 ADOT as a rookie. Was only valuable for fantasy because he scored 7 touchdowns. Last year that went up to 8.3. It was more of a normal tight end usage. I think you're looking at a 100 target guy who could score 6 or 7 touchdowns pretty easy, probably ends up around 700 or 800 yards.
So could he be the exception to the rule of you've got to be the top or second to the top in targets on a team at tight end?
No, I think he could. He was second on the team in targets last year, and I think he could be this year.
Well, Dave, there were 2 exceptions this year. George Kittle and Evan Ingram were both top 6 tight ends, and they were not top 5 in targets.
We're projecting
top two in targets on their team. So
you have to project a big increase in ability to earn targets from George Pickens to think that Freiermuth's not going to be second on his team in targets.
Or a downgrade in targets to Deontay Johnson, but I don't think that's happening. I can't make that case. And I'm a huge fan of Pickens, and I know that many on the Steelers are as well. And that's why I have a hard time saying that Freiermuth is a great breakout tight end. But at the same time, he was 6th among tight ends in targets per game last year. And that was when he was sharing with Pickens and Johnson. For a while, Chase Claypool was on that team, so there were others as well. So I can't just straight up say forget about Freiermuth. But I wouldn't make him. I wouldn't prioritize him in drafts. You keep the name in mind if you're waiting till the back half of the draft to take a tight end.